Today's podcast isn't just a place, or a guest, or a conversation. It's a Celtic myth, an experience of memory, myth and meaning. And it's part of our Voices of the Land series. Out on the Llŷn Peninsula, where the land leans into the sea and stories travel on the wind, there's a place that doesn't just preserve history, it lives it. At Felin Uchaf, myth, craft and community come together, not as something to observe, but something to take part in. Here, in a roundhouse built in the old ways, stories are told as they always have been, by voice, by firelight and by memory. And at the heart of it all is Dafydd, our storyteller today, who's rooted in the land, carries the myth and the histories of the Llŷn Peninsula and North Wales into the present day. This episode is Voices of the Land. Dafydd, welcome.
Oh, thank you. A privilege.
And it's a privilege for me. It's absolutely awesome, this whole environment. How long have you been developing it?
I suppose as an idea, perhaps over 30 years. As an idea, things take a long time to germinate, but on the land here, actually on this site for 22 years now. Yes.
22 years?
22 years since we set up a charity and bought this parcel of land.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, so
yes.
It was always an intention from the get-go.
Yeah, it was always an intention.
Right.
We looked at different places on the Llŷn Peninsula and further inland in Snowdonia to set up this kind of community hub, if you like. And each one's site-specific. And this one came up eventually, having gone from one to the other over some years.
Right.
This one came up for sale and we went for it.
And do we presume that this was once a farmhouse, which you've just grown?
That's it, yeah. So we're seated now in a brand new building. There was an old farmhouse here, an old dwelling. It had been empty some 20 years.
Right.
The land had lain fallow around it.
Okay.
Treeless, windswept. So it's quite a different setting now with the little eco buildings and some 18,000 new trees, which form a new forest line around it.
Goodness. And all because you planted them?
Yes, I've had very little, I would say I've been oiling the cogs.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been oiling the cogs, showing people where to plant, perhaps how to plant, but leaving it to others to do the planting.
Oh, right.
Very clever.
Absolutely. Yes, so that was canny. You're about 2 miles or so from Aberdaron?
We're about 2 miles from Aberdaron and the sea is around 3-4 miles either side of us. So we get the winds from all directions and sometimes you really feel the salt air. You can smell the kelp on it.
Okay. So just describe very briefly the sort of the layout of the buildings, because they're all, there's a number and they've all got their own handwriting, it appears.
Yes, that's a beautiful way of describing it, Mark. They all have their little idiosyncrasies from the old Celtic roundhouse you first described, which was our first building, right up through to more contemporary buildings that we're putting up now. And they all feel like they've grown from the land because we use a lot of local materials, clay and thatch and timber. But they all only make sense if they are in dialogue together.
Yes.
So otherwise, there would be a karaoke of different styles.
Right.
But they all work as a campus.
Yes.
So what the vision has been is to set up a campus, a rural campus.
Right.
And for a campus, you need cultural spaces. You need spaces to accommodate people. You need spaces to eat, places to meditate and to be quietly on your own. So these buildings have been put together by volunteers and by young people for young people to be able to come here and study.
And those skills sound as though they were actually rooted in the land and have just sort of grown. The craft, the nature, the survival of those skills has been exacerbated by being in this environment, I take it.
You're right. They were. It is a past tense in that when I first came to the Llŷn Peninsula, and I'm a foreigner, I came from 20 miles due east from here.
That's classed as a foreigner, is it?
It is from here, yes. Though I have relatives that are born and bred around here and cousins, plenty here. But I come from 20 miles due east, which is different again. But the Llŷn was always a place where things lingered longer.
Right.
Things that had disappeared or had gone to ground in Snowdonia lingered longer on the Llŷn.
Okay.
It's that bit more remote, and the communities are tight knit, and they're proud of what they do. And things had gone quite threadbare here in terms of craft.
Right.
They'd gone thin on the ground, and so we decided, well, is there some mileage in looking at that craft again, not propping it up? Because it had died a natural death. Boat building, basket making, all of those things had gone to ground. So there was no thread of continuity. There was some tradition here still spoken of, but it was no longer alive in the community. But it was a generation away, and it seemed still on the wind, if you know what I mean.
I do.
So we picked it up.
Yeah, and breathed life into it.
But it breathed life into it in a new way, in that we were no longer having to earn a living doing those things, making baskets or creels or weaving or making these clay buildings and such, or thatching. None of us were having to earn a living through doing that, but we were exploring the craft for a different purpose.
For the sake of the craft.
For the sake of the craft. And what is the sake of the craft, isn't it?
It is.
What is the sake of the craft? Why do we do anything? Why do we work? What is the beauty of working? And there is something beyond the monetary value of working, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It brings back value, of course, to the community. There's that conversation between people then, and the sort of mercurial relationships that people have, if you're buying from somebody who's making something locally, but also just how health-giving it is, and in terms of self-awareness, confidence, all of those things comes with work, doesn't it? And
it does.
Appreciation.
It does. And there's a completeness about actually doing that work, isn't there? And sort of starting a day and arriving at the end of the day, or exhausted or not, but feeling that you've had a complete day.
Yes.
A little bit like you when I rooted you out of the barn tonight.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, you speak from experience, I think, in this manner.
So, how feeling is very important to this whole environment and to your life. Clearly, what do people feel when they come here first?
Nowadays, I think people feel that it's a special place. When we first came here, it was windswept. There was hardly a tree here. It was no different from any other 23-acre fields. And there are other fields larger than this. There are 50-acre fields in neighbouring farms where the hedgerows were all cleared in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
But this is 23 acres, and it was one field, you could say. And now there are 12 small fields. And it does feel a very special place. It's ringing with birdsong, with wildlife. There's ferns and flowers in the forest that weren't there before, or they've gone dormant and they've come through. So people feel it's a very special place, that it's been like this for ages, for generations. But of course, it's been only like this for 22 years.
But one would say, are the myths that surround this environment that go back 220 years or 520 years.
You're right. We imagine all sorts of pasts for ourselves, don't we?
We do.
We can anything that's not written or not dug up by an archaeologist and looked at forensically can be interpreted in a number of different ways, however we like to. And I think we can interpret mythology from our own standpoint as we'd like it to have been.
Right.
So we can look at the mythology of the Llŷn and the legends and such of the Llŷn, and we can glean from them a number of things. We can put ourselves in the minds of the people that composed them or told them. But we can look beyond that into the inspiration. What was the inspiration, and why did they tell these things? Why did they survive in the oral tradition, beyond the books and academics that recorded them perhaps late in the 19th century? Why had they survived for so long? And it's because there's something of a flame of imagination. This flame of imagination. You listen to it and you come into story space. You come into a magical space. And in that magical space, anything can become manifest. And you can carry that back into your real life, I think. So you can go into story space where anything can happen, can't it? You can travel to the moon in a day and be back for tea. And if you can do that in your mind, it's only a stone throw to actually do that physically and make that manifest. And I think that's the beauty of story and of mythology of a place. So the Llŷn is a windswept, as you introduced it, a rocky place sticking out into the Irish Sea, a green finger of land. But layer it with mythology, layer it with history, and colour it with people's imaginations over centuries. And you have then the potential of moving forward in a way that gives people pride in where they are. It inspires them to greatness because they thought that people in the past were great. They were heroes, they were heroines, they were people that did great deeds and misdeeds, but they did great things. And we can aspire to those. Not that we can stride over the Irish Sea up to our knees and such, but we can aspire to greatness in ourselves.
It stops being, from what you're telling me, it stops being nostalgia. It starts being relevance into the world that you allow your imagination to go into. So it's not nostalgic, it's relevant to a modern world.
Yes.
And I think that's if you agree, then right. I think that's quite awesome. It's quite awesome. So
I think it can begin as nostalgia, as especially in Welsh, we have this term hiraeth. You probably heard hiraeth. It's if you have a compendium of Welsh poetry, there will be perhaps a third of it will be nature poetry, a third of it will be perhaps love poetry, and certainly a third of it will be longing for something lost. Hiraeth.
Really?
We are very good at hiraeth. They say a Welsh person is never, the Welsh are never happy until they're sad. So we are wallowing our melancholy in a way, and nostalgia for something, for a golden time that maybe never was.
Right.
For the heroes gone to ground that lie sleeping in caves. We live by that.
And those experiences, those glimpses into the past, which you sort of drag the people of the present into and consume them with it. Those are often, well, seemingly, those are all delivered in the roundhouse.
Yes, and the roundhouse is
just tell us a wee bit about the roundhouse, if you will.
Well, describe it then. It was the first building that we put together. We dug into the ground, into the clay. There was a little hill. We dug into the hill, as you would a fairy mound, if you like,
right,
and created this auditorium within it, a circle of stone. We piled earth to make banks, and on top of the earth banks, we put poles with local primary schools, in the main with the local primary schools, and then thatched it, again with local primary schools. So it's building handmade by dozens of children.
Right.
And now, who are now in their 30s and have their own children and come here and can point out their thumbprints on the old columns when they were here as primary school children.
So they were allowed to leave an identity here?
They were, yes. Yeah. And they came in their school uniforms, and many school uniforms have white upon them or yellow, and they left all uniform brown. And teachers as well. And they left, like you talked about the Celtic people, the Celtic people, they left tattooed with clay marks all over their faces. They left with wild imaginations also, but they left their prints and marks, of course, as we all like to. They left their marks upon the buildings.
Absolutely, and they come back now, again in a white shirt, but what they're going to leave like, I don't know.
Yes,
yes. And they just bring in their families, and so the rapture continues. They just get subsumed into it, don't they?
Well, it's their place.
Yes,
and it's had some respect with that.
So the stories aren't just experienced; they're actually consumed, aren't they?
I suppose they're an experience, as you say, a shared experience.
A shared experience.
It's as you have with your enterprises and initiatives. They're about community building, aren't they?
Yes.
And these buildings are about community building.
Right.
They're an excuse to bring people together.
Right.
They're really something you hang upon.
And a focus with young people. You've mentioned young people a number of times.
Because the older people generally will come anyway.
Okay.
So the oldest gentleman working on the roundhouse was in his early 90s. He made all the pegs for the roundhouse. He was the local village blacksmith up until his retirement. And so he passed on lots of his skills. And we have a lot of the older people in the generation in their 80s now who have passed on a lot of their skills. But the younger people need to know that the place is open for them. So we've aimed it at younger people, but people of all ages come here. It's a multi-generational place. But it's the younger people in that frame from school leaving age, 16, 17, through to maybe early 20s, who are searching for something in themselves.
Yeah.
Those are the people who are attracted, and they've got lots of energy.
Absolutely.
And, you can harness it and put them to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't see any whips on the way in, so they must do it very, very voluntarily, willingly.
Plenty of good food.
Plenty. Oh, that's the key to a young person's stomach, isn't it?
Through a stomach, yeah.
So the myth and the landscape is obviously it completely engulfs people when they come here, and when I was doing a wee bit of research for this particular podcast, not just about yourself, but about the Llŷn and about the landscape behind the Llŷn and the heritage of there, and two or three things came out. Firstly, is that the Llŷn Peninsula is a place, or still is probably a place of pilgrimage and myth. There are connections I found to King Arthur legends and ancient folk Welsh lore. And as a storyteller, hills and stones and coastlines sort of almost sketch out a lot of the stories that you seem to, that I certainly have experienced. So is it therefore a case that many of the Welsh myths that you talk about and that you share to people are place-based? And in fact, their voices are tied to exact locations. So there's lots of different locations around the Llŷn, and they all seem to have a different story. Would you say that was...
I think you're right. I think that's very true. In that, I'm thinking now, I cast my mind a few miles away. There's a place called Coetan Arthur, Arthur's Quintain. It's a great standing stone burial chamber. There's Arthur's Table, which is on top of the Garmadrin hill fort. It's a long table. Underneath the table, there's a running stream of running water full of myth and legend, that is too. And people associate those with legend. But of course, Arthur is everywhere. Arthur is from Brittany, from Middle Europe, from Germany, everyone claims Arthur.
Really?
Oh, everyone claims Arthur.
They all want a piece.
They all want a piece of Arthur. They all want Arthur to be their ancestor. Some people even claim to have ancestral roots going right back to Arthur or Gawain or to one of their knights, And it may be or may not be true. It's not important for me whether it happened there or not. But as you say, that it's connected with a place helps us to root and find meaning in it. So there's a place not far from here in the foothills of Snowdonia where there's a stone. And in that stone, there's a hole right through it. It's a great big hole. I could put my fist right through it. And it's said that a staff, a pointed bronze-tipped staff, was thrown through that stone. And it struck the warrior on the other side. And that was before Roman times. That was ancient times. Now, whether it happened or not, people still go to that place. Mm. They remember the story when they see it. And they try to stand in the same place as the warrior. And all sorts of things go on there. But they remember. They put together the story from the physical landscape that still holds in its name anyways, Maen Gronw stone. It still holds the memory of that story, and whether it happened there, whether it never happened, or whether it happened in another country and was carried here by the Celts when they came 500 BC, who knows? But that's not important. It is connected with that place, as you say. And there are hamlets, there are coves, there are caves, only a stone throw from here, and they're all connected with heroes and with mythologies and local legends. And whether they happened or not is irrelevant, really.
They're good stories. Well, they're not just stories, are they?
Yeah.
They are something more.
They
are definitely something more.
Yeah,
and that ore that, for example, that stone with the hole in,
yes.
that ore that must inspire people to want to almost transport themselves to that point where those soldiers were, or
Absolutely.
whatever, whether they were the recipient or the thrower, whichever. They just want to be there, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like in some way the dragon. When we hear about the dragon, my children used to ask me when they were younger, Dad, are there still dragons? And for a while, I didn't know how to answer them, really. Not that I did want to dispel something like, Santa Claus, or I didn't want to dispel, not that I was holding back from dispelling something about their childhood and imagination and such thing, but there are real dragons. In my imagination, I can create real dragons.
Yeah.
I can, their leathery wings creaking above, fire breathing. We can create those real dragons.
Right.
And we want to touch that. We want to believe in that. Well, I can't touch a dragon. I can't go to a place where I can point to a fire-breathing fire drake worm. But in my imagination, they live still.
What a great escape that is, isn't it? It's a great escape. So do you think that myths actually teach us more than facts, in a way? It's a bit of a big question, but...
that goes right to the core of things, doesn't it? That's a great question. There's a hill just behind where you're seated, and I can see the top of it just above the window. And there's a Bronze Age cairn on top of it. And once there was a posse of people following an archaeologist up to the top of the cairn. And I was coming from the opposite side of the hill, and I knew the archaeologist leading quite well. And she said, "Oh, look, and here's Dafydd. Now, I've been telling you all about what really happened here in the Bronze Age, and Dafydd will tell you what might have happened here."
Lovely subtle difference.
Yeah, there is. So there's fact. And I've worked with archaeologists from Bangor University that you've spoken to. And what we found is that the mythology and the legend actually goes hand in hand with what's found in the ground. It gives purpose and meaning. A purpose in that many archaeologists, they're not treasure hunters, but they're certainly storytellers.
Absolutely.
They're just lapping it up, And they love archaeology because they want to discover something of the past. They love the past. So they have an imagination that takes them to the past, but it's filled with story. They wouldn't be scratching with a tooth comb on top of a hill in the middle of the winter if it was just a physical thing. No, they're looking for something that may have been there from story long ago, and they're looking for that talk or that hoof or whatever it was from that story. Like we all know the story of Troy and the Iliad, the famous Iliad and the Odyssey and such. Well, it drove an archaeologist, Llŷn, to go to Turkey to follow the trail between two rivers to look for this sacked city. And he dug up this city based on Homer's myth. Dug up a city, found treasures there, dressed his wife in these silver and gold treasures, the treasures of Troy, Helen of Troy. And it led him to this place. Now, whether Troy actually ever existed there, who knows? This place was apparently sacked 7 times. He found 7 layers of burnt city there. But it was enough to move mountains
Clearly.
to try and find this place of mythology. And people are always trying to find Arthur's birthplace or Arthur's resting place. Edward I, he famously dug up Arthur and Guinevere from Glastonbury. And of course, it was a big money spinner for the monks then. But so, people are always trying to find the physical attributes of mythology.
And a hook to where they live, or a hook to where they want to believe, don't they?
Yes, and we want them to happen here, don't we?
We do, and that's nice segue. Thank you, because that sort of brings me back to to where we are now, and to say, but you teach practical skills as well, don't you?
Yes.
It's actually sort of practical. I've written down here practical wisdom, because I feel that's what you share. You share that wisdom of anything is possible, and you can do it as easily as the next man or girl next to you.
Yes.
And practically, you can sort of teach them fire making and shelter and connection to the seasons. Clearly, that must be quite a strong driver here with the seasons. And I suppose after they've been here for a while, they read the land, they read the weather, they read even the animals that might be around. So is there a modern disconnection versus ancestral awareness? That's my question now. Do you feel that the ancestral awareness that actually surrounds all of us and our lives, do you think that there is a modern disconnection? We just can't connect to what we want to connect to, other than through mediums like yourself as a storyteller. Is there
such an interesting question? Such a wide-ranging
Sorry.
No,
Okay.
It is. It's a fascinating question.
If I hold it a little bit nearer, are the skills that we've lost that actually for life we need? And that's not just saying somebody who is a lathe turner or somebody who actually understands the land, but are the skills that really the myths and the heritage of the Llŷn will sort of say to people, or this is what you should be doing? Is there a...
That's interesting too. I take a broad view of things, and it's a personal take on things, It's a personal take on
which is what our podcast is.
And I always think that things die out for a good reason. Oh, some things are forced out and cruelly put to ground. And it does seem lamentable that they pass. But for many things, they die because there's no economic reason for them anymore, or because their time has passed. Their time has passed. They had a golden age and it's past now. And there are so many stories about a new age not being born until the old one has been put to rest, or its head has been cut off and it's been buried. And that's happened again and again and again. So we have to recognize, I think, that with each generation, something is lost, but something is gained in that as well. And whether and people look at me, I can see in my mind's eye the places where curlews and lapwing and little tern and a great many birds are nested as a child, I remember, that are no more. So I've seen the world change and become, much poorer because of that. But other things have come. The beet has come. The sunfish has come with the warming of the oceans. The other things, the world is such a dynamic place, and things are lost and things are found all the time. And I tend not to clutch onto them and say that we must hold on to these things at all costs because they are who we are. And we've breathed this mythology or this memory for so long. It has formed us. But maybe we don't need to hold on to these things anymore. Hold
Absolutely.
them in your open palm. They are things, and if they have real practical use, if they have a real use, these stories or craft, then they will live. We don't have to prop them up artificially. We don't have to care for them and conserve them with such delicacy. Let them be in the strongest of winds, in the gale that is passing through our communities. And if they live, they live. If they do not, and they pass, we will remember them. But we will let them pass. And we will breathe new things. So that is my take on it.
So these energies are like a flame, and you're quite happy for that flame to die, because another flame will then grow and something else will replace it. Not better, not worse, but just different.
Different, yes, different. Because I think myself, I do tell stories, and my grandmother was a great storyteller, But I didn't hear stories told in my community in the same way as I share them in the roundhouse. That had passed long ago.
Really?
That had passed long ago. And it had passed because there was the chapel had come maybe, and there was, with the Methodist revival, there was less of a year for the old tales and the old folk songs in the same ways. So they were put to ground. And I'm sort of digging them up, I'm researching them, and I'm asking with an open palm and an open question, are these still relevant? Do you still want to hear them?
So you don't tell stories of the past. They're actually stories of the future, but are based on things that you feel are important or that you should direct people's awareness to.
Well, they say, when you were talking about myself as a teacher, that you teach most what you need to learn yourself, don't they?
Absolutely, yes.
And I need to learn these things myself.
Really?
And that's why I share them, because I need to learn them myself. I need to hear them myself. And when you teach somebody, like a yoga teacher, they're taught the craft, first of all, the skill of yoga. And but to be a master, they have to teach other people, because it's through the teaching, of course, as you know, it's through the teaching of something that you become aware of something yourself. You're able to detach it from your own ego. You can look at it, you can shape it, you can become detached from it. And I need this ground wire. So yes, we do storytelling in the roundhouse, and that's fantastical, fantasy. It is fantastical, and we do the craft because it's an earth wire. It grounds us, so we don't not soaring with the birds or the dragons all the time in fantasy. We're actually digging in the earth. We're planting trees. We're making a stone wall. We're working with the heavy, real elements of the earth. And when you can dig and make a building with your bare hands, then you can talk about magic.
And you were just sort of I'm just going to pick up on that analogy that you just used with yoga, and doing yoga every day, which I do. Then you never actually learn yoga. It's always a practice. That just went through my mind then when you were just saying that, because it is apt. It just sort of keeps it together. So you are really you're a bridge to people's imaginations, to different lives that they can live, to skills that you can bring out. You're a bridge to make that happen here. And Felin Uchaf is really that sort of environment that they can thrive in and feel safe in, I guess.
Feel safe in, yes.
Do you choose the stories, or do the stories choose you?
Oh, that's another. You're full of such interesting questions. I choose the stories that I love. Of course, out of the array of stories, I have hundreds of stories.
Because you want to keep learning them.
Yes, I love to tell them, because they put me in a frame of mind. Some of them are difficult stories. Some of them are unresolved, and I'm yet to find their roots. Some of them are, they're new to me, and I'm telling them for the first time sometimes.
Really?
So I don't always tell the same tale. In fact, I would tire of myself if I told the same tale all the time. I sometimes lean on an old tale, because it's an old favourite, like an old friend that comes up again every now and again, seasonally. But sometimes there are new tales. So I'm learning new stories now, and I won't tell them publicly for another couple of years. I'm maturing them. I'm working on them.
Okay, I'm not going to ask you to give away that confidence, because, like a good wine, it would be wrong to try and tap the barrel before it's actually fermented properly. But could I impose on you, or just during this Voices series, could I impose on you just to tell us a short story?
Yes, we've been talking about the Llŷn, and one of the stories that I love. I was a child who was fortunate to go out into the sea at a young age in a little wooden boat fishing for mackerel. And of course, many people do. And a little outboard engine tugging away out beyond the Cricket Castle, beyond the rocks. And my friend's father used to get snagged from time to time at the roots at the base of the sea. And he would say, "Can you hear it? Can you hear it?" And we listened, we craned our heads, and we never could. but he said he could. And he said there was a bell far, far down below, and that he could hear the tugging. He could hear the bell ringing still on its tower far below. Of course, he was full of story, and he was telling us about Clychau Cantre'r Gwylod, Clychau Cantre'r Gwylod, and it's one of the stories of Wales that I love the best, I think, because it brings together geology, geography, history, mythology, community, all those things. And it's a meeting place for all of those things. So it's a long tale. And in it, perhaps shall I tell you a part of it?
Please. Yes,
You
please.
see, every western seaboard has its Atlantis story. And Cantre'r Gwylod, the lower hundreds, is our story and our beginnings. So there is a land spreading out to sea, a golden land full of wheat and honey. The orchards are so full of apples that the trees lean over in the autumn time, hunking with apples. Everything is fruitful and golden. And there is a king, and his name is Gwyddno. And he has a brother, and his name is Seithienin. Seithienin is the watcher of the tower. And it's a tower stretches high, high, high over the city walls. And the city walls are built from south to north, all along the side of the land. And the land is low-lying. And the city walls are the only things that protect it from the sea, from Mananan Macmor, from the king of the sea, that every day drives his chariot up and down the coast, looking for a breach in the wall. But Seithienin, the watchtower keeper, he rings a great bell when the tide comes in, and 20 strong men put their hands behind the beam, push the door fast, and close the doors against the tide. And then when the tide goes out and the chariots are out far across the sea again, he calls again with a bell, the 20 strong men. They open the gates again, and the rivers flow out into the sea. And every day this happens twice a day, of course. And the story goes that there is a great storm that brews one night, and Seithienin, he's drunk. He's found drunk in the court of his brother, and he misses the call of the bell. And because of that, the whole of the lower lands are flooded. And it's said that night, a freak storm, the stars are blotted out like candles being blown out. It's a very beautiful description. It's a long tale. And if I give you the story as it happens, as it unfolds for a young boy whose name is Gwynhoedl. Gwynhoedl is a young fisher boy, and his cottage is at the foot of the earthen dike. And this night, he sees all the seabirds coming over the dike, all the gulls, all the cormorants. And he hears them coming silently and settling in the fields. And he knows that's the only sure sign of a storm. But he can hear no wind. And he makes his way to the top of the dike. He looks out and he can see that the sea is far, far out. The sun is setting, the moon is rising, and there's hardly a shimmer on the sea. It's so calm, hardly a shimmer on the sea. It's mill pond calm, and it's far, far out against the sands. And then he turns, and there's a crackle. On the horizon, there's a crackle, and one by one, the stars are blown out, like candles being blown out. And a great curtain of darkness rises from the south. And then a wind gently blows in his hair. And then the wind becomes a gale. And he looks to the watchtower, and he can see in the lightning that the watchtower is empty, and the bell is swinging by now in the wind. And he makes his way from tower to tower along the top of the wall until he reaches the great watchtower. And he calls to Seithienin, calls to the watchman there, "Ring your bell, call the men." But there's nobody there. Seithienin is down in the great hall, his cheek on the spilt wine on the table, snoring. And so it falls upon Gwynhoedl, and he takes the great oaken staff, he strikes the great bell, but by then it's too late. Mananan Macmor, the king of the sea, is galloping in with his chariots. White horses galloping in from east to west, all whipped to a fury. and he's making his way towards the dyke, and there's nothing that Gwynhoedl can do about it. He comes through the dashes, open the great city gates, takes the city gates on the horses' hooves, and the horses neighing come into the city, shatter the walls. They flow into the city with the sea and drown the city. And Gwynhoedl makes his way to the stable, gets a white horse, takes the sleeping princess, and makes landward. All night he's riding eastward, and all night he hears behind him the crackle of thunder and the hooves of Manannán and Macmór and the white horses of the sea chasing him. And all night they hear the wheat being flattened, and the orchards crashing under the waves behind them. And they make their way galloping, until they start to climb, and then they climb into the foothills of Snowdonia, and exhausted, the horse falls on its side, and they sleep under the flank of the horse, under the belly of the sleeping horse. They sleep all night, the crackling of the wind and the thunder over them. And in the morning, there's blue sky, there's larks, and Gwynhoedl lifts his head above the belly of the sleeping horse, and all he can see are the grey churning waves of the sea where the land was. And of course, that's the story of Cantred Gwylod, of the lower lands. And there are still sunken forests there in Abersoch. There are still sunken forests from that time. It's said to have been a real event that happened about 7,000 BC. A great part of Norway slumped into the sea, caused a great tsunami that came and swamped Dogger Bank, came round St. George's Channel, broke through the last of the glacial dikes that was the salt marsh of the Llŷn, and flooded the land here. So it's a memory that we've kept in story in this form for over 7,000 years. Now that's goosepimply extraordinary, isn't it? And Gwynhoedl, well, the boy, where did he settle? He settled in Llân Gwynhoedl. And it's said that there's a stone there where he put his footprint, and it's there to this day outside of the church. Gwynhoedl's footprint, that young lad, Gwynhoedl. Llân Gwynhoedl. So it has a place in, and we can talk about this story. But a friend of mine, he's a geologist, he's an oceanographic scientist, and he can take you to where you can look upon the maps and see that actually there was this great dike, we call it St. Patrick's Causeway, that kept back the sea for all that time until the great tsunami broke through, flooded this lower hundreds. And now we have the great churning waves of the sea, all remembered in this tale.
Amazing.
Extraordinary.
Amazing. Absolutely. Extraordinary is the right word. Yeah. Thank you for that. And that was awesome. I think what that sort of brings us to is the fact that this land does have a voice. It's I'm so thrilled that our series is called Voices of the Land, because I think this land does have a voice. And the land, from what you've said this afternoon, the land isn't silent. It continually reminds us where we are and who we should be, I guess.
I guess if we have a year to listen, and if we have a year to listen, isn't it?
Yes.
In a way, we're listening to ourselves. In a way, and the land is mirroring who we wish to be,
yes,
who we could be, and who we wish to be. The land isn't telling us to be anybody but ourselves fully.
And we don't need to hear that. We need to listen to it, don't we?
That's more listening than
hearing.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think
right.
I'd sort of bring Felin Uchaf and yourself and this whole experience. I'd sort of say, as long as stories are told here, this place is alive. And in this part of Wales, the land doesn't just sit here; it remembers. And if you know how to listen, exactly what you've just said, I guess it speaks to you. And some of the most important things that you can learn, that certainly I've learned, can't be written down. They have to be shown, heard, felt, and I guess lived, really. So let's put ourselves back, Dafydd. Let's stay with this story for a moment and sign this off for us, really, because it's it really sort of concludes where we've been today and the fact that the voices of this land are listening to us?
The fire is low now. The voices have softened, and outside the wind still moves across the Llŷn, just as it always has. Nothing here is new, and yet nothing here feels old. Because this place, Canolfan Felin Uchaf, isn't holding on to the past. It's keeping something alive, not in books, not behind glass, but in people. In telling the story, in the telling of a story, in the passing of a skill, in the quiet moment when someone realizes they're part of something bigger than themselves. And maybe that's what we've been searching for. In a world that moves faster every day, places like this ask us to slow down, to listen, to remember, to remember. Because as long as we do, the fire never really goes out.
And I think my question for our listeners from both of us is, when did you, the listener, last sit and truly listen? And what stories belong to your place, to the place that you've occupied so far in your life? Dafydd, is there anything in the podcast that we've missed that you'd like to add? Or are you happy just to call it a day at that?
No, it's perfect. I think you captured, your questions are very poignant, and we could speak for days, couldn't we, Mark?
Well, I'm sure you could.
Any one of those things. About any one of those things. It's thrilling, and we haven't exhausted any of those questions. I've taken you wide of the mark of some of them onto other, but that's the way. One story takes us to another.
Absolutely.
So yes, I'm delighted. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Good, and it has for me. Thank you. So I'd just like to say a very big thank you. This is very important to our Voices of the Land series, because we want people to hold on to this, hold on to the experience, hold on to the stories that you've shared this afternoon. And I'd only sign off quite heartfelt and say, may the Dunkers spirit go with you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn I ti.